Chapter 100. He Honghua's eyes lit up when she heard that. Joe, how did you come up with this gimmick? Our company can make a lot of money this way. Fu Jiu didn't say anything and just smiled faintly. Soon, He Honghua thought of something and frowned again. But we don't have Spade Z in our company. We can't lie to people like this, right? Mom, how can this be a lie? Fu Jiu patted He Honghua's shoulder and said in a low voice, I watched the live broadcast today. Since Spade Z said that he belongs to our company, then he will definitely appear in the gaming contest. Otherwise, his reputation will be ruined. So don't worry about this. He will definitely appear, and you can deal with the media boldly. When He Honghua heard her daughter's suggestion, she skipped over to return the call to her friend from the media. Chen Xiaodong looked at his young master's electrifying eyes and said seriously, Young master, why do I feel that you were intentionally flirting with madam? What are you trying to hide? Xiaodong. Fu Jiu stretched out her arm and put it on her little boy servant's shoulder. Haven't you realized this after watching so many movies? The more you know, the faster you die. I've been playing games all night, and I'm tired. Go make me a sandwich and pour me a glass of wine, and I'll consider not killing you. Chen Xiaodong's hair stood up when his young master put him on the shoulder. I'll go now. Young master, don't try to turn me gay. Turn him gay? Fu Jiu raised her pretty eyebrows and thought that even if she wanted to turn him gay, she would find Almighty Qin. Why would she find a little kid? Fu Jiu blew the hair on her forehead and took out her phone that was vibrating. It was a WeChat message from Qin Mo. A few short words with the same cold tone, it's raining outside. Don't hang out at the internet cafe if you have nothing to do. Fu Jiu wiped her hair with a towel and looked at He Honghua, who was on the phone. If her mother knew that she had found such a godson for her, how would she react? Brother Mo, I'm home. After saying that, in order to prove that she wasn't lying, Fu Jiu took a selfie and sent it over. Qin Mo looked at the youngster's face, which was still dripping with water. It was unbelievably tender, as though even the hair on her face was sticking to it. Her beautiful and exquisite collarbone was revealed. Qin Mo's fingers paused. He placed his phone down and stared at the traffic outside the floor-to-ceiling window. After a few seconds of silence, he picked up the phone again. His tone was firm and commanding. I told you, don't send me such pictures again. Go to sleep now, I'll pick you up from school tomorrow. Fu Jiu was confused again. What was wrong with her picture? Isn't it quite clear? No one could guess the Almighty's thoughts. However, there was one thing that had to be put on the agenda. Since she had already announced that she was going to make San suffer in the esports competition, she had to recruit enough people. Fu Jiu rested her chin on her fingers and suddenly smiled. Let's go to the game during class tomorrow. We can use the parts that the Almighty bought tonight. When He Honghua came back from the phone call, her daughter was gone. Only the red wine was gone, and Chen Xiaodong's sandwich was still in the same place. Where's Joe? She asked. Chapter 101. The next day, Fu Jiu yawned and went to school. She spent the whole night assembling her laptop, and her shoulders were almost broken. This time, she didn't skateboard. She took the bus, and it was 2 stops away. Along the way, she saw many girls in the same school uniform taking pictures of her. Fu Jiu smiled at them with a lollipop in her mouth. When someone leaned over, she held the girl's hand like a gentleman. When she got off the bus, all the girls blushed and followed Fu Jiu excitedly. Only when the young man entered the classroom did they let out a long sigh of regret. However, the classroom wasn't as pleasant. As soon as Fu Jiu stepped in, she saw a mess on the floor. Shui Yaoyao was squatting on the floor. Her long hair hung down and covered her face, but it wasn't hard to see how depressed she was. Even when her fingers touched the textbook, she slightly tightened her grip. Damn fatty, you should know your place when you're so ugly. Stay away from me. The boy said as he kicked the book in Shui Yaoyao's hand. Still picking it up? Let me tell you, I've been tolerating you fat pig for long enough. If you still want to stay in class, go tell the homeroom teacher and ask him to change your desk. What the hell is this? Poor and ugly, it's an insult to my eyes. Shui Yao Yao's fingers tightened again, and the force almost sank into her palm. Fu Jiu knew that she was holding it in because she couldn't cry. Once she cried, she would lose completely. A group of people were watching the show, especially some girls who were covering their faint smiles, and their picky eyes swept over Shui Yao Yao's body again and again. You're right. If she's expelled from school, she shouldn't come back. Although she was wrongly accused of being a thief, it's true that her family is poor. Also, the weather is cold, and she doesn't change her clothes. She only has one set of school uniform, and she doesn't even wash it. Her long hair smells like vegetables. Does she not even take a shower? Stop talking, it's disgusting. Mocking laughter was always more painful than punches. Shui Yao Yao's head hung even lower, almost to the point where it was buried in the ground. The boy standing next to her wanted to kick again, but he was kicked to the side. There was a loud bang. Before the boy could cry out in pain, Fu Jiu reached out and pulled Shui Yao Yao into her arms. She held the back of Shui Yao Yao's head with her left hand and pressed it into her own chest. She grabbed his uniform with her right hand and smiled evilly. A man who hits a woman is worse than a piece of trash. You can either shut up now, or come with me to the sports field at the back. Let's see whose fist is harder. Fu Jiu's kick just now had already made him unable to stand, and with the way this person was looking at him, the boy only felt goosebumps all over his body, and he took a step back submissively. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows and let go of his collar. She turned sideways and hooked her black school bag back. Her school uniform was half unbuttoned, and she said faintly, "You don't want to be next to Shui Yao Yao, do you?" The boy opened his mouth with a pale face. Who would like to be next to such a woman? He didn't dare to call her fat pig anymore. He was afraid that Fu Jiu would kick him to death again. Why didn't he realize that this gay was so fierce when he fought? Chapter 102. Everyone in the classroom was shocked when they saw Fu Jiu hugging Shui Yao Yao. Some of the girls had their eyes wide open as they looked at this scene in disbelief. Shui Yao Yao herself froze from the beginning. She wanted to say thank you, but she was afraid that if she opened her mouth, she wouldn't be able to stop crying. But Fu Jiu acted like nothing had happened. She sat down on the chair, put her left hand on Shui Yao Yao's back casually, and smiled lightly. The buns from last time were delicious. Do you have any more today? Shui Yao Yao didn't say anything. She nodded and shook her head. She looked down, and big drops of tears fell onto the textbook one after another. She didn't understand why she didn't cry when she was bullied like that. But the youngster's most ordinary greeting could make her cry uncontrollably. Shui Yao Yao thought that maybe the hug just now was too warm, so warm that she could turn a blind eye to the humiliation. No more. Fu Jiu touched her belly regretfully. Then she moved her left hand, and a lollipop appeared in front of Shui Yao Yao. She had a smile on her face. Take it, girls need to eat sweets. The surrounding students looked at the interaction between the two with envy and jealousy. The prettiest girl in the class couldn't figure out what was so good about that fat pig that Fu Jiu would treat him like this. Is Fu Jiu really in love with that fat pig? Not necessarily. Didn't they say that Fu Jiu is gay? Look at his attitude towards girls. Does he look like a gay? He is obviously straight. But he liked handsome Jiang and said that he wanted to keep almighty Qin. How do you explain that? I don't care. Anyway, my Highness Jiu is straight now. In order to protect Fu Jiu's reputation, the school had set up a small group of fans. They affectionately called Fu Jiu Highness Jiu. Because every time their highness appeared, that evil look, that attitude of oppressing scumbags, that bright and translucent eyes, that calm demeanor in front of the media, was very much like the ancient princes who held great power. As a result, the phrase, His Highness the Ninth, quickly appeared. Perhaps it was because birds of a feather flocked together, but everyone who liked Fujio had very good values. For example, they had long wanted to stand up for what happened today, but their individual power was limited. Plus, that boy was not someone to be messed with in school, and he had connections with people outside the school. Just when the three of them were hesitating whether to stand up for him or not, they saw His Highness Joe kick him. That action was extremely cool, and the kick was really satisfying. From that moment on, they decided that regardless of whether His Highness Joe was straight or gay, they would protect this young man. Fujio had no idea that she had gained 3 fans because of her actions. After assembling her laptop for a whole day yesterday, she just wanted to lie on her desk and sleep. It could be said that Fujio slept through the first 2 classes. With Shui Yaoyao covering for her, the teacher didn't notice. Jiang Feiyang, who was sitting on the other side, was a little absent-minded. He always wanted to look forward in the morning. He never thought that the weakling who once said that he liked him would actually be willing to not be his desk mate anymore. Chapter 103. When Fujio woke up again, it was already the 3rd period between classes. She didn't know what Jiang Feiyang was thinking, but he actually walked to her side, knocked on her desk, and asked in a low voice, "Are you really going to sit here?" Fujio looked at him with interest, and her left hand supported her chin lazily. Her gaze made Jiang Feiyang sober up immediately. What was he doing? Was he trying to make this little weakling go back? He was crazy. But young Master Jiang still bit the bullet and said, "Actually, you don't have to do this. The teacher will rearrange the seats next Monday, and let Shui Yaoyao sit with the girls. I think it's not bad here." Fujio smiled. "At least I don't have to worry about being reported in class." Jiang Feiyang knew that he was talking about him, and his face turned pale. He felt that this little weakling was completely unreasonable. He had already given him a way out, but he didn't want to. "Do whatever you want." Jiang Feiyang threw down the sentence and went back to his seat. His eyes were still filled with anger, and the girls who liked him didn't understand what was wrong with him. Shui Yaoyao also raised her head. Will I be a bad influence on you?" "Influence?" Fujio took out the modified English textbook from the desk and curled up her lips. "I'm the last student, so why should I be afraid of being influenced? You are better at studying than me, especially in physics. Is that really for humans to learn?" This wasn't the first time Fujio complained about physics, and it was obvious how much she hated this subject. Shui Yaoyao looked at the silver-haired young man sitting next to her with thin lips. Because he had just woken up, there were still a few strands of hair on top of his head. They were messy and a bit casual, as if they could grow a pair of ears. He was so handsome that it made people think that he was shamelessly cute. Shui Yaoyao had never been as happy as she was now. Shui Yaoyao really liked Fujio, and it wasn't the kind of love between a man and a woman. She knew that she didn't deserve the young man with her looks, and she wanted to repay him from the bottom of her heart. Even if he didn't need it, she wanted to make the young man feel comfortable. "In the future, if you have any questions about physics, I can." Before Shui Yaoyao could finish, the phone next to Fujio's hand rang. It wasn't a ringtone, but a vibration. No matter what, the school didn't allow students to bring their mobile phones, but rules were rules. Not many people would not bring their mobile phones. Fujio gestured for him to wait for a moment and then swiped the screen open. It was a WeChat message from Qin Emo. His voice was cold and indifferent, and he sounded like an abstinent CEO. "I'll be near school at noon. Come out, I'll take you out for lunch." "Socializing?" "I'm not going, I'll take a stroll in the game later." "Brother Emo. I'm really still a student." Fujio always felt that going to school wasn't that important in Almighty Qin's eyes. How could a straight-A student like him, who was guaranteed a spot in a prestigious university before even graduating, understand the pain of being a slacker? Sigh. Qin Mo paused for a moment, then used the tone of an older brother to remind her again, "Pay attention in class." Fujio laughed when she heard that. She tilted her head and sent a voice message over, Don't worry, I'm usually very well behaved. My new desk mate is planning to tutor me in the future. Go ahead, see you after school. He thought that this matter was over. After all, there had been no news from the other side for a few minutes. Just when Fujio was planning to dig out more members of the team, her phone vibrated again. So your grades are so bad that you need to tutor to reach the standard. Fujio. Chapter 104. The main thing was that after saying this, Boss Chin didn't have any intention of restraining himself. Then he added, "What rank did you get last time?" Fujio's fingers paused. She really didn't want to answer this question, because it was a huge blow to her. She almost suspected that the Almighty said that on purpose. With the Almighty's black-bellied personality, it was very possible. She really couldn't reply to such a man. Fujio decisively put her phone in the desk. Not long after, he was shocked again. There are more than 50 people in your class. You should be in the top 40, right? Fujio still didn't say anything. She was sure that the Almighty did it on purpose. Top 45? Fujio's handsome face fell even more. When he felt that it was about time, the man slowly replied, "Don't tell me you're in the last 3. Instead of being tortured by the Almighty again and again, she might as well admit it herself. Fujio sent 2 words over gloomily, "Fall 1. Oh. Chin Mo's beautiful tone was raised with an obvious smile. So that's how it is. Fujio. What else could it be? Almighty, you asked so many questions because you already knew that I was a slacker. 11:05 p.m. In a 5-star hotel, the table was full of dishes. It was a bit early for ordinary people to eat, but not for business. Chatting with the young man while the dishes were being served really increased one's appetite. Chin Mo looked at the ellipses on the screen, and the young man's depressed face appeared in his mind again. He couldn't help but smile. Secretary Liang stood beside him and saw his CEO's sudden smile. He couldn't help but shiver. When did CEO Chin ever smile during a business meeting? And CEO Chin didn't have the habit of holding his phone. He secretly nodded and saw Fujio's name on the screen. At this moment, Secretary Liang's heart was in a mess. A mess that couldn't be described. The person who came for business was also from an aristocratic family, but he was more than 10 years older than Chin Mo. Seeing him smile, he raised his eyebrows. When they were almost done with the project, Chin Mo asked indifferently, "I heard that CEO Xiao has a brother who is in high school." CEO Xiao was stunned. It seemed that he didn't expect the powerful young Master Chin to talk about such private matters. He smiled and said, "Yes, I do have a brother." "How is his study?" Chin Mo picked up the glass of red wine and took a sip. His handsome face didn't change at all, as if he was just having a casual chat. CEO Xiao smiled bitterly. "To be honest, it's not good. I have to attend a parent-teacher conference on his behalf tomorrow." Parent-teacher meeting. Chin Mo repeated these 3 words, a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes deepened. No one knew what he was thinking. President Xiao continued, "But I can't blame him. Even I can't understand the current high school textbooks. Those questions are too difficult. I'm planning to find a private tutor to tutor him." Chin Mo didn't reply. President Xiao thought that he was unhappy, but he knew when to stop. "Look at me, I talk a lot when I talk about my brother. It's nothing. I have a younger brother too. I understand that feeling." Chin Mo's expression was still calm. He was dressed in a well-ironed suit, looking noble and luxurious. What he said almost made Secretary Liang spit out the red wine in his mouth. "CEO Chin, CEO Zhao's son is his biological brother, but yours isn't." Chapter 105. After Fujio sent the last ellipsis, she turned on her phone's hotspot and put up her English textbook. Everyone thought that she was reading a book, including the teacher in class. Only Shui Yaoyao, who was sitting next to her, knew that she wasn't reading a book, but a small notebook. She looked at the exquisite little book of the knife and axe divine skill and covered her mouth in shock. She was afraid that she would scream and expose Fujio's secret to the teacher. Who would have thought that what was supposed to be an English textbook would turn out to be a computer? How did he do it? Shui Yaoyao looked at the young man's perfect side profile. She wasn't stupid. She knew that this kind of notebook couldn't be bought, and it didn't even have a logo on it. Anyone with basic computer science would know that this was a top-notch notebook. Why did he have a notebook like this? He was just an ordinary young man. He used to be an arrogant and despotic nouveau riche. Was all this just a disguise? Shui Yaoyao looked at that pair of slender hands moving beautifully on the keyboard. She also played games, so she knew that the more powerful a person was, the more silent his typing was. And, when the young man was typing, he didn't look down at all. He supported his chin with one hand and looked at the podium with his beautiful eyes, as if he wasn't typing, but listening to the class. How powerful must he be to be able to do this? Shui Yaoyao clenched her fists, and an indescribable excitement flowed through her blood. As a poor person, she knew that Director Zhang's incident wasn't something that could be exposed so easily. She knew how deep Director Zhang's connections were in the school. How did such a private message come about? Who could have triggered such a powerful network effect in just one night? There must be someone behind all of this. Perhaps Chief Zhang would hate this pusher. But as the victims, they could go back to school and clear her name as a thief, all because of this person. That was the hero she wanted to thank the most. More and more voices were distorted because they didn't have enough connections or money. But at that time, Shui Yaoyao saw a lot of hope. She had been wondering who that person was, and even the police had no clue. Now, she finally knew who that person was. It turned out that he was sitting right next to her, protecting her time and time again. Shui Yaoyao put down her trembling right hand, grabbed the carbon pen, and wrote a note. Because she was too excited, her beautiful handwriting was a little crooked. You're the one who did Director Zhang, aren't you? Fujio was still multitasking as she searched for team members in the game. The English textbook shell in her hand was the result of her staying up all night last night. She had ordered the shell online, and it took a lot of effort to install and run it. A piece of paper suddenly appeared in front of her. The words on the paper were blurred by her tears, but they were even clearer. Fujio paused and turned to look at Shui Yaoyao. Seeing this, Shui Yaoyao tore another piece of paper and quickly wrote, I don't have any other intentions and I won't tell anyone. I just want to. Chapter 106. When Shui Yaoyao saw that word again, she suddenly froze. Guessing was one thing, but confirming it was another. She suddenly remembered that day when the young man faced countless media with determination, as if he was wearing armor, and said with bright eyes, because we all believe that justice may be late, but it will never be absent. So that was it. So that was how it had always been. Shui Yaoyao covered her mouth with reddened eyes. She wanted to cry, but not because she was sad, but because she was very happy. She was poor and ugly, and she had a lot of fat on her body. She had been bullied a lot in school. Some of them weren't even bullying, but just a look of disdain or a sneer, but it was enough to destroy a person's heart. Shui Yaoyao was glad that she could meet such a person. He had a face and a heart that was more handsome than anyone else. Even the way he looked at her was full of warmth. I won't tell anyone. Not only would she not tell anyone, but she would also keep it a secret for the young man. Fujio smiled and wrote 3 words over. I know. Shui Yaoyao paused and wrote another sentence. I saw that you were looking for someone in the game just now. I know how to play hero too. Do you want me to help you? Fujio's eyes lit up when she heard that Shui Yaoyao was playing hero. She didn't ask her how good she was, but directly handed her notebook over. It was Shui Yaoyao's first time playing games in class. After she got over the mental burden, she was able to play the game smoothly. The small laptop was surprisingly easy to use. She didn't pause at all on the keyboard, and the graphics were smooth. It was even faster than some high-end computers. In fact, Shui Yaoyao didn't use high-end computers because she was too fat. Other than games, she didn't have any other entertainment options. Speaking of which, it was sad. Another reason was that she could afford such a pastime. She could only spend 6 yuan on a computer in an internet cafe for 3 hours. It wasn't even enough to buy a cup of Starbucks for other students. Therefore, Shui Yaoyao wasn't weak. In fact, she was even more skilled than the average player. Fu Jiu watched from the side, and her beautiful eyebrows raised a little. Before she could finish typing, she wrote a string of words on the note. I have a job here that pays well. Are you interested in helping me? Shui Yaoyao didn't even ask what the job was. She immediately wrote, I'm willing. After answering, she realized that she had been too enthusiastic. She was afraid that Fu Jiu would hate her, so she retracted her hand. Let's talk about work. I play games every day, and I use my spare time. I saw your operation just now, but it's still a little flawed. We'll talk about it later. Anyway, our goal is to dominate this year's esports selection contest, so you have to plan your studies well. Don't fail when the time comes, and you won't be able to qualify for the contest. Shui Yaoyao looked at the 3 words fail and coughed lightly. Then, she wrote back, actually, Your Highness Jiu, don't you think you should pay more attention to your studies? Chapter 107. This was indeed something she should pay attention to. Fu Jiu raised her hand and pushed back the silver hair on her forehead. Don't worry, I'll only fail physics this time. Shui Yaoyao reminded the young man, failing physics is still a failure. In order to prevent young people from being too addicted to games, the rule of the esports selection contest is that you have to pass every subject. Fu Jiu paused. The rules are like this? Don't you just need to pass? No. Because Shui Yaoyao was a fan of League of Legends, she more or less paid attention to the rules of esports competitions. Your Highness Jiu, you have to work hard. At this moment, Fu Jiu realized that what she needed to do the most was not to buy a paperback, but to take out her physics textbook and play with it dozens of times. The key was that she had no interest in physics. Should I hire a tutor? Shui Yaoyao wrote on the note. Fu Jiu looked at that line of words and suddenly felt a little melancholy. But it was still good to find a team member, so she casually wrote, Tell me your phone number. Shui Yaoyao blushed. Just as she replied in a low voice, I don't have a phone. The English teacher suddenly appeared beside her. Fu Jiu reacted quickly. She pulled her left hand back and replaced the notebook with a real English textbook. She also swept the other notes to the side. Only the one he had just written was caught by the English teacher. The English teacher looked at the words on the note and frowned. She asked Shui Yaoyao, What's going on? Shui Yaoyao clenched her fists and was about to speak. She heard the young man chuckle in her ear, Teacher Chen, I wrote this note to her. The English teacher didn't expect that Fu Jiu would ask for Shui Yaoyao's phone number. She didn't know what to say, so she pushed up her glasses. Ahem, Fu Jiu, pay attention in class. You've made a lot of progress recently. You're a good seedling. Since you're still a student, you should put more effort into your studies. Don't mistake your affection for Shui Yaoyao as affection. This sentence contained too much information, and all the students in the class looked at Fu Jiu in shock. What does that mean? Fu Jiu confessed to Shui Yaoyao. Isn't this a little too incompatible? Could it be that Fu Jiu liked that kind of guy? Some girls couldn't accept it, and Jiang Feiyang clenched his fists even tighter. He really couldn't think of what Fu Jiu liked about that girl. It would have been fine if she was pretty, but it just had to be like that, Shui Yaoyao wanted to explain, but Fu Jiu winked at her with her left eye, looking devilishly handsome. She knew that the youth allowed everyone to misunderstand him in order to protect her. After all, if others found out that she was the one who took the initiative to pass notes, she would only suffer more rumors and slanders in school. She and the young man were people from 2 different worlds. Shui Yaoyao had always known this, so she didn't dare to ask for anything. Just like her and that person, even though she was now his stepsister, they were still worlds apart in school. With the English teacher's warning, Fujio didn't log into the game again. She thought of something and took out her phone to send Shin Mo a WeChat message. Brother Mo, can I bring a classmate to play tennis today? No matter how domineering she was, Fujio still had manners in her bones. Since the other party was taking her there were some things she had to ask in advance. Shin Mo replied faintly, sure. Chapter 108. Shui Yaoyao didn't agree to her idol's invitation at first. To be honest, she had never played tennis in a professional tennis court before, and the expenses there were probably not low. Plus, she didn't have a good figure, so she would be treated as an anomaly in such an occasion. The young man probably saw through her concerns, so he added with a light smile, "Don't worry, I won't let you play on the court. You just need to hold my computer and play by the side. The main thing is that I can correct your small flaws in the game." It turned out that the young man already knew that she didn't have a cell phone. But he was so gentle that he didn't say anything. Even after school, the young man walked beside her with a black school bag on one shoulder. He still looked so handsome. It was drizzling outside. Fujio didn't take an umbrella. After her silver hair was wet, her face looked even more handsome and delicate. And the black earring on her ear, coupled with her faint smile, was really a weapon to instantly seduce girls. "Fujio, can you wait?" Suddenly, a girl stood in front of Fujio with a blushing face. She was pushed by two friends behind her, and her cheeks were a little hot. "There's a new movie that's playing today. Can I go watch it with you?" Fujio smiled and said, "I'm busy today, sorry." It was not a good feeling to be rejected. Even though she knew that the other party might not accept, but that girl still lowered her head, and her hand that was holding the movie tickets trembled a little. Then go do what you need to do." Fujio looked at her white fingertips, raised her left hand, and tucked her long hair behind her ear. She smiled slightly. "It's raining today, so it's better to go back early. Don't catch a cold." Instantly, the three girls were boiling with excitement. The girl whose hair had been pinned felt an unprecedented warmth. This was their Highness Joe. Even when he was rejecting someone, he did it so gently. When Shin Mo rolled down the window, he saw such a scene. He was still sitting in the back of the car with his legs crossed. On top of him was a business tablet, and it looked like he had just finished a video conference. He originally wanted to light a cigarette. His left hand was still playing with the limited edition silver lighter, but after glancing at the youth outside the car, he paused slightly. His deep eyes sank, and even his eyes were filled with a lot of cold air. "President Shin, do we need to drive a little further?" The driver thought it was his problem, so he asked cautiously. Shin Mo put the lighter away with a smack, pushed open the car door, and walked towards the youngster after saying, "No need." The autumn rain in the north was usually very cold, so Shin Mo was dressed differently today. He was wearing a black double-breasted windbreaker over a well-ironed suit, and there was a circle of pure white fox fur around the collar of the windbreaker. He looked domineering and noble in every way. His handsome and flawless face attracted countless gazes in just a few seconds. But before people could call out his name, he reached out and grabbed the back of the youngster's uniform collar. He smiled coldly. "Have you forgotten what I told you?" Chapter 109. Wronged? Shin Mo arched a brow as he looked at the youngster in front of him. That face was obviously very likable, but it was too cunning. He tapped his right hand with his finger. "Didn't you pluck someone's hair with this claw just now?" Fujio was still smiling. Raindrops slid down her silver hair and landed on her face. "That's not flirting." Shin Mo glanced at him, took the black umbrella that the driver had opened for him, and held it over the youngster's head. He ignored the shrill screams around them and said faintly, "Get in the car first." Fujio knew that his anger had subsided. She glanced sideways at Shui Yaoyao, opened the back door, and gestured for her to get in. Chin Mo frowned. Is this the person you sent a WeChat message to bring to the stadium? Yes. Fu Jiu pushed Shui Yaoyao's back. Shui Yaoyao, on the other hand, felt an unprecedented pressure. His Highness Jiu had never said that the person he wanted to play tennis with was Almighty Qin. Moreover, although Almighty Qin's gaze towards her wasn't impolite, it was as cold as an icy rain, which could easily make people shiver. Why don't you go in? Fu Jiu smiled lightly. Go in. I told Brother Mo that we can bring people in. Shui Yaoyao swallowed her saliva with difficulty. She didn't even dare to imagine how the people around her would look at her when she approached the car. To be honest, the students at the side were shocked speechless. Not to mention that Almighty Qin's appearance was a bit sudden. Just looking at that chubby girl being able to get so close to him and possibly get into Almighty Qin's car, they felt a burst of jealousy and hatred. How many generations of good fortune did that woman accumulate? Shui Yaoyao's scalp went numb. She hesitated for a long time but still couldn't move her leg. Just as Fu Jiu was about to push him in, someone grabbed her collar again. It was Chin Mo. He had an umbrella in one hand, and the other hand was wearing a black glove. He looked a little like an ancient devil. He grabbed Fu Jiu with the other hand, and his face was handsome and noble. Don't you know the rules? Let the girls sit in the front, and the two of us sit in the back. Fu Jiu thought to herself, I'm a woman too. But he wouldn't say it like that. The corner of his mouth curled up, and he opened the door in a gentlemanly manner. Only then did Shui Yaoyao have the courage to step out, mainly because she felt that Almighty Qin's gaze wasn't as cold as before. After the three of them got in the car, the commotion outside was cut off. On a rainy day like this, there would always be towels in the top-end commercial vehicles. Chin Mo casually took a towel and threw it at the youngster's head, freeing one hand to wipe his head with the towel. Shui Yaoyao was stunned when she saw this scene in the rearview mirror. She didn't know how to react and could only sit there stiffly. In fact, the driver's mood was also very complicated. After all, this was the first time he had seen his young master get out of the car on a rainy day. Getting out of the car was one thing, but after getting in the car, the first thing he wiped wasn't his own hand, but another person's head. This doesn't conform to the young master's usual cleanliness. No, that's not right. It should be said that he actually allowed a drenched handsome young man to sit next to him. Wouldn't he usually kick him out of the car? Chapter 110. When Chin Mo heard this, he turned his head, his lips brushing past the youngster's wet hair. His fingers froze, and his lips felt a little itchy. His voice turned cold. Take the towel and wipe yourself. After saying this, he took the business tablet back to his hand, plugged in his headphones, and had a cold expression on his face as if he was going to continue the meeting. Fu Jiu rubbed her hair, not understanding what was wrong with her brother Mo. His emotions came out of nowhere. She hadn't started flirting yet. But seeing that the Almighty was in a meeting, Fu Jiu didn't disturb him. She kept the towel on her head and didn't take it off. She unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. Only a minute had passed, and Fu Jiu thought that the Almighty had forgotten about her. Who knew that when she looked up, the man sitting next to her took the towel off her head and frowned. Aren't you afraid of catching a cold? Fu Jiu laughed. So Brother Mo is concerned about me. In front of your classmates, I won't kick you out. If you have time, read more books. One of Chin Mo's ears was still wearing a black earring. He lifted his eyelids faintly, his thin lips forming a faint smile. At least don't be last. Fu Jiu calmed down at the mention of her results. She held her lollipop in her mouth the whole time and didn't say a word. She didn't even try to play with Chin Mo's hair. CEO Chin was very satisfied with this. He even asked the driver to stop the car and buy some drinks for him and his classmates. After all, he was the younger brother that she recognized. She would slowly correct her bad habit of flirting with others. She had to give her younger brother some face in front of outsiders. This was CEO Chin's most intuitive thought. Especially when he glanced sideways and saw the young man blowing at the steam in the cup with his head lowered. The white steam surged up and touched his silver hair, and he felt that what he did was right. Just like his cat, it would be more obedient if it was given food. Chin Mo crossed his legs and opened the business magazine. His left hand subconsciously caressed the youngster's head, and his thin lips curved up. He seemed to be in a good mood. After Fu Jiu was patted on the head, she tilted her head to look at the Almighty, then turned back and continued to drink. It was indeed comfortable to drink something warm on a rainy day. Shui Yaoyao held the piping hot caramel macchiato in her hands. She knew very well that she had benefited from His Highness Jiu, but she really didn't expect that His Highness Jiu and Almighty Qin would have such a good relationship. Although she saw His Highness Jiu get on Almighty Qin's car last time, not many people knew why he got on, because they were still guessing if Almighty Qin wanted to teach His Highness Jiu a lesson. After all, what Highness Jiu did back then was too. Cough, Almighty Qin probably couldn't stand him. Moreover, the whole school was saying that His Highness Jiu was gay and had a crush on Almighty Qin. But looking at the interaction between the two of them, Highness Jiu wasn't the one who took the initiative. On the contrary, Almighty Qin seemed to treat Highness Jiu very well. No, she shouldn't think like that. Shui Yaoyao shook her head. The relationship between Almighty Qin and Highness Jiu was probably just a friendship between two men. When the driver saw this, his fingers slipped and the cup of coffee he was supposed to pass to his young master fell out of the car. Chin Mo glanced over at them. The driver immediately said, "Young master, I'll go buy another cup." Chapter 111. Fu Jiu, who was called out, raised her head. Her silver hair was slightly curled up, giving off a cat's ear feeling. It was so cute. The driver froze when he heard Chin Mo's words. He even suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Their family's young master, the young master who had severe mysophobia and looked at everyone as if they were germs, actually said that he wanted to drink the same cup of coffee with someone else. If Madam and Boss knew about this, they would definitely look at young master in surprise. This was not his usual style at all. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows and curled her lips. She didn't care. "Brother Mo, do you want to drink it now? I just blew on it, it shouldn't be hot anymore." This young man. The driver immediately felt a headache coming on. A normal person shouldn't reply like that, right? Chin Mo didn't say anything. Instead, he held Fu Jiu's hand, turned his head, and pressed his lips directly onto the takeaway cup. His handsome and abstinent side profile looked very handsome in the misty rain, especially since he was wearing a black suit. Fu Jiu's eyes lit up. Fu Jiu was also a natural and energetic pretty boy. Her school uniform's collar brushed past Chin Mo's shoulder, and the scene was very beautiful. Shui Yaoyao felt that the two most handsome men in the world were together. It was a feast for the eyes. But Shui Yaoyao glanced at the rearview mirror, feeling conflicted. Was she the only one who thought that sharing a cup of coffee with him was an indirect kiss? It's a little sweet. When Chin Mo spoke, his breath was very close. Fu Jiu took another sip and licked the water droplets on her lower lip with the tip of her tongue. A little. It must be because of the lollipop I ate just now. It tastes like chocolate. Chin Mo stared at the youngster's face that was inches away from his. Only then did he realize that the distance between them was a little too close. The fluff on the youngster's face was reflected in his eyes once again. Those light-colored lips that were perfect for kissing were moist and tempting. Chin Mo frowned and retracted his gaze. Then, he tilted his head and looked out of the car window with his deep eyes. He raised his eyes and met the driver's gaze. His voice deepened and he spoke in his usual commanding tone, "Drive." "Yes, young master." The driver also felt that he couldn't stop anymore. This was the first time he saw his young master being so close to someone. Even those in the military compound had never been treated like this by the young master. Of course, Qin Mo knew what the driver was thinking, but he didn't have to tell him. Treating a friend was different from treating a brother. When dealing with his younger brother, he would try his best to give in to him. Even if there were times, Almighty Qin still wanted this guy to stay away from him so that he wouldn't be flirting with him all the time. Fu Jiu blinked and looked at the Almighty's expression. She cupped her chin with her left hand and smiled wickedly. Brother Mo was indeed vulnerable to flirting. But soon, Fu Jiu wasn't that happy anymore. Anyone who had been to a proper tennis court would know that the temperature inside was neither too high nor too low. There would be specialized people who would hand towels and tea to the players. Similarly, players had to change into sportswear and wear knee pads and other professional equipment before the coach would allow them to play. This was also to prevent people from straining their muscles during the game. Wearing knee pads was fine, but going into the men's clothing department to change into sportswear. Fu Jiu, words for the readers: when you're outside, give 7 boys a small theater. Qin Mo sneered. Classmate Shui, don't you think you're redundant? Fu Jiu. Chapter 112. It was really inconvenient for Fu Jiu. With one hand in her pocket, she paused and looked sideways at Shui Yaoyao. Shui Yaoyao actually didn't want to change her clothes, mainly because of her figure. She probably couldn't fit into the clothes here. However, Shui Yaoyao still underestimated the influence of Qin Mo's name in the 3 northeastern provinces. In Jiang City, any business like this would be more or less owned by the Qin Corporation. So here, they were all treated like VIPs. The receptionist standing next to them was very pretty, and she was wearing a professional suit. She said to her, "Miss Shui, we have prepared your sportswear. Please come this way." After that, the receptionist bowed to Qin Mo and left with her people. It was Shui Yaoyao's first time in a place like this, so she was a bit reserved, so she didn't notice anything wrong with Fu Jiu. Other than the receptionist, only Fu Jiu and Qin Mo were left in the luxuriously decorated hall. The men's locker room was not far from their left. Fu Jiu was still thinking about what excuse she could use. Qin Mo had already put one arm around her neck and brought her into the room. His left hand didn't forget to grab the sportswear from the receptionist's hands. CEO Qin had a habit of never letting anyone serve him when he entered a place like this. Even if it was just changing clothes, he would let the receptionists wait outside. Even though they were treated like VIPs, there was only one locker room. Fu Jiu looked around as soon as she entered the room. Except for the open cabinet, which served as a little bit of cover, the rest of the place was empty. If she changed her clothes here, her gender would be exposed in less than 3 seconds. In fact, when Qin Mo said he was going to play basketball, Fu Jiu was already prepared for physical contact. Today, she wrapped a circle of bandages around her chest and wore a pure white hurdle vest. But even so, she couldn't strip naked in front of a god, right? Fu Jiu hugged the black sportswear that the man gave her. Her beautiful eyebrows furrowed, and even her eyes darkened. Qin Mo had already given his windbreaker to the receptionist when he came in, so he only had his suit on. He unbuttoned his shirt with one hand and turned his head to look at Fu Jiu. The corner of his mouth curled up, and he couldn't hide his handsome asceticism. "What? Do you want me to help you take it off?" Fu Jiu knew that the Almighty was picking on her first gay meetup. It seemed like it was impossible to use the same trick again. The current Almighty was fundamentally different from the man she had first met, who still knew how to do gay meetup tutorials. The only difference was that he really treated her as his little brother, still not moving. With a tug of his long fingers, he threw the shirt into the wardrobe. He took out a lighter and lit a cigarette. As the smoke rose, only his perfect upper body could be seen. Every inch of his abdominal muscles was sexy. He was only wearing a pair of black handmade trousers. The tailored trousers made his legs look especially slender. The black belt around his waist had been untied and pinned to the side. It was sexy and lethal. Chapter 113. Fujio smiled and looked up at Chin Mo. Her eyes were too beautiful. Then, she tiptoed and moved her thin lips close to Chin Mo's left ear. She said in a seductive voice, "Brother Mo, if you want to see me undress so badly, I will think that you are interested in me." Chin Mo's eyes darkened, and he pulled the young man away. Fujio lost her balance and almost hit the clothes rack behind her. Chin Mo reached out in time and pulled the young man back. His face was obviously a little cold, but he also had a faint smile on his face. "Where did you learn these words from?" Fujio saw that the man didn't want to let go of her. The fragrant cigarette smell lingered in her nose, but she wasn't in a hurry. She said lazily, "I went to nightclubs a lot, and I learned it." "Brother Mo, you know my reputation." "You had a reputation?" Chin Mo's eyes darkened. He stuffed the unfinished cigarette into the young man's mouth, reached out his hand, and patted the little face that made him angry and hateful. His voice was still light, but it was irresistible. "Get over there and change your clothes. Next time you talk in my ear, I will tear you apart." Fujio believed in the Almighty's ability to do what he said, especially when it came to disciplining her. As the Almighty's little brother, there were a lot of things she had to be careful of. But fortunately, after the Almighty pushed her away, he seemed to dislike her approaching. He changed his clothes faster, as if he was saying, "Hurry up and get over here." From start to finish, the Almighty was cold and aloof, but his face was indeed handsome. Even when he was wearing sportswear, he still looked like the main characters in comics, handsome and noble beyond belief. Fujio looked at the back of that person walking out and secretly let out a sigh of relief. She walked to her clothes, threw her school jacket aside, and then bent down to take it off. Fujio took off her clothes in a handsome and fast way. But what she didn't expect was that when she took the sportswear and was about to put it on, there was a click. The door to the changing room was opened. The man leaned elegantly against the door frame and looked at her calmly. He raised his brows. "Is this why you didn't want to change your clothes just now? Is it because you're too thin?" Jean Wan raised her eyebrows. "Is this the reason why you didn't want to change your clothes just now?" Fujio was extremely glad that she hadn't closed the wardrobe just now. The half-open door was just enough to cover her chest area. Realizing that the man was walking towards her, Fujio quickly put the top over her head and pulled it up to her waist. The man walked to her side, pulled her over with one hand, combed her messy hair, and looked at her with deep eyes. "What are you panicking about?" Fujio lowered her eyes and deliberately lowered her voice. "I'm afraid that Brother Mo will laugh at me if he sees me. My body isn't as good as yours. It's shriveled, too pale, and I don't even have abs." Hearing the youngster's words, Chin Mo's fingers paused. When he was the youngster's age, he seemed to be very mindful of his own figure. No wonder this guy had been throwing a tantrum since the beginning and refused to take off his clothes. So it was the rebellious side of puberty at work. This was something Chin Mo could understand. In his opinion, the youngster was good in all aspects except for flirting. It was okay to be a little rebellious, and this little rebellious was related to the youngster's self-esteem. As an older brother, he should give the youngster more privacy. Chapter 114. If Secretary Liang knew what Chin Mo was thinking right now, he would be glad that his CEO finally realized that he wasn't related to Chin Mo by blood. But this kind of awareness seemed to be more like a younger brother complex. Chin Mo didn't think that he was leaning towards the young man at all. He looked at Fujio with his deep eyes and said in a calm voice, "You're not manly at all. Come out and run a few more laps later." As he said that, he turned around and played with the black wristband with his slender fingers. His handsome face was cold as usual. "Change, I don't want to watch." "Fujio, Almighty, can't you just wait outside?" Forget it, it was better for the Almighty to stay in front of her. He was too meticulous, too black-bellied, and too familiar with his tricks. If he wasn't careful, people would fall into his trap. When Fujio was a hacker, she had never met such a difficult person to deal with. If the police were all like the Almighty, she really did think a lot before doing things. But the Almighty seemed to be amenable to coaxing but not coercion. As long as she wavered a little, it seemed that the Almighty would really love her like a little brother. Fujiu looked at the man's tall and straight back and slowly curled up her lips. After changing, she didn't have to worry anymore. She had a bandage on her chest and a jacket, so she didn't have to worry about anything else. She directly put her hand on Qin Mo's shoulder from behind and acted like a good little brother. Brother Mo, give in to me later. I can't control the ball well. Qin Mo held back for a long time before he slapped the young man's hand down. The Almighty told himself coldly that the young man was in the rebellious phase of adolescence. Any resistance to him might cause some damage to his soul. But the young man was too close, and when that familiar, clean, and sweet smell came over, he always wanted to pry open the young man's mouth to see how much candy he had eaten. At this time, Shui Yao Yao was already waiting outside the court with a cup of tea in her hand. In the middle of the coffee table was a very beautiful big fruit plate. Coming to this kind of place was not to play tennis, but to enjoy life. Apart from the green grass outside, the temperature inside was adjusted. The brown sofa was very comfortable to lean on, and there was a faint scent of cologne in the air. Shui Yao Yao was still being reserved. Her legs were too thick, and she always wanted to hide them. But when she raised her head and saw the intimate posture of the two, she actually forgot all about being reserved. She just watched in a daze as the young man smiled at her and then turned his head to whisper into Almighty Qin's ear. The most surprising thing was that Almighty Qin actually curved his lips. Then, he reached out and pinched the young man's neck. Don't bargain with me. 30 minutes per match, not a second less. Fujiu's handsome face fell, and she was a little depressed. Can't I be handsome? Where's the brother Khan? Your body isn't even worth looking at, and you call yourself handsome? Qin Mo took the racket that the receptionist passed to him and pressed it into the youngster's arms. In a casual tone, he said, play well, don't think of slacking off. The receptionist didn't expect young Master Qin to give his racket to someone else. He looked at Fujiu in surprise. Fujiu was smart. She could tell from the receptionist's eyes that the racket wasn't provided by the tennis court. It was the Almighty's private property. Chapter 115. Fujiu paused, looked up, and set her eyes on the man not far away. He was picking out a racket provided by the court. His slender hands were wrapped in pure black gloves, and he looked quite professional in his professional badminton attire. When he lowered his head, his long and thick eyelashes formed a dark shadow, making him look careless, like a popular star shooting a TV series. If Almighty Qin's current appearance was put on a live broadcast platform, his popularity would probably go up another level. Qin Feng probably noticed the young man's gaze, so he suddenly looked up and looked at Fujiu indifferently. What are you up to now? Fujiu put the racket back and revealed her handsome canine teeth. She smiled brightly. Nothing, I just think Brother Mo is too handsome, so I want to take a few more glances. Shui Yao Yao was very conflicted as she listened on the side. Why did she feel like His Highness Jiu was flirting with Almighty Qin? Two men were playing tennis together, but Shui Yao Yao felt like they were showing off their love. But, those two people were indeed a good match. Shui Yao Yao held her teacup and looked at the court enviously. Fujiu met her gaze and smiled lightly. She walked over with her racket and pulled out her notebook from her bag. She leaned over and said to her, log in and play 2 rounds first. I'll talk to you about the problem during the break. Okay. Shui Yao Yao didn't expect that the young man would still think of her at this time. She felt like she was being taken care of, and her face turned red. Fujiu's eyes swept over the fruit platter on the coffee table. She picked up a piece of watermelon and put it in her mouth. Her voice was gentle. You can eat any fruit you want, don't be shy. Okay. Shui Yao Yao nodded hard. She looked at the young man's face with eyes full of worship. When Qin Mo saw this scene on the court, he bounced the racket in his left hand a few times, and his dark eyes deepened. When Fu Jiu walked over again, she saw that the Almighty's face was a lot colder. Could it be that the game was about to start, so the Almighty's murderous aura was rising? Kick off. Qin Mo left 2 words for the receptionist beside him before he stood tall and straight in front of the net. Fu Jiu's eyes turned serious. The young man bent his knees, and his side profile was clean and handsome. His silver hair fell to the side of his ears, and he was wearing a pair of black earrings. He smashed the ball hard. Qin Mo calmly observed the direction in which the ball was flying. Then, he turned his body sideways, and with a beautiful posture, he gripped his racket tightly and aimed it at the white ball. Pa! Fu Jiu's forehead was instantly hit. He rubbed his face with the side of his hand. His face was in so much pain that it looked pitiful. Brother Mo, you did it on purpose, didn't you? Hit me in the face? Was she really invited to play badminton? He wasn't here to take revenge on her. Qin Mo looked at the youngster, his eyes dimming. Since you are here to play, focus on playing. Don't always think about flirting with girls. Since when did I always think about flirting with girls? Fu Jiu muttered, feeling a little wronged. Qin Mo's eyes swept over the youngster's fluffy head, and in the end, he couldn't overcome the surging sense of guilt in his heart. He turned his head to look at the receptionist, and his voice wasn't very happy. Go get the ice. Yes. The receptionist still didn't understand what young Master Qin wanted the ice for. Chapter 116. Fu Jiu was stunned. She looked at the man's face in front of her and curled up her lips into a smile. It's not that serious. The receptionist on the side also felt that young Master Qin wasn't treating his little brother, but a porcelain doll. Young Master Qin used to play even harder, but he had never covered someone's forehead in person. Qin Mo's slender fingers tightened, and his voice was very indifferent. You'll hurt more next time if you keep shooting. As he spoke, he pinched the youngster's chin and twisted it lightly with his fingertips. Turn your face over. Fu Jiu didn't feel anything. She held her head high and let Qin Mo cover her forehead for about a minute. Shui Yao Yao, who was still playing games, moved uncomfortably. She felt like she was unnecessary sitting there. It was better for her not to look at the court. It was better for her to reduce her presence. After covering her forehead, Qin Mo served the ball himself. He used a lot less force than before. Fu Jiu was even more handsome than usual when she played, especially when she didn't stop on the court. She kept running back and forth, and her amazing jumping ability matched with her face. She was so youthful that it was enviable. Both of them had good skills, especially Qin Mo. He just stood there and walked back and forth in front of the court without changing his expression. He swung his racket casually, and his amazing skills matched with his perfect, streamlined body, causing the people on the other court to exclaim. This is professional level, right? Who's the one playing? You don't know him? You should have heard of the Qin family, right? Nonsense. I'm not asking about young Master Qin. I'm asking about the youngster he's playing with. Could it be one of the young masters from the military compound? This kind of court was big, and privacy was important. Qin Mo and his friends were treated like VIPs. When the people on the other side looked here, they could only see the figure, but not the face. Hey, young Master Fu, come over and see if you can see it clearly. Fu Ximing was short, so the adults who were doing business with his father couldn't see him clearly, much less Fu Ximing. He fiddled with the tennis racket in his hand and said, I've seen young Master Qin a few times. Aside from the few people in the military compound, there's no one else around him. There's no need to guess the other party's identity. When those people heard this, they immediately laughed and complimented, that's true, but I haven't seen young Master Qin in real life. Young Master Fu is indeed amazing. That's nothing. Fu Ximing raised his chin indifferently. He was quite arrogant. Fu Zhongyi was elated to hear his son being praised. My son doesn't like to talk much, but he's actually very good at games. Young Master Qin plays games too, so we got to know each other. Since we know each other, why don't we go over and say hello? When those people heard this, they were tempted. Fu Ximing furrowed his brows. Young Master Qin doesn't like to be disturbed when he's playing. In the future. He sounded disappointed, but at least there was still hope. I'll have to rely on young Master Fu's recommendation. Fu Ximing grunted in acknowledgement and glanced in that direction again. In fact, he was thinking if he should find a chance to talk to young Master Qin when he was free. The reason why he came here to play tennis was because he heard that young Master Qin often came here to exercise. He had indeed met young Master Qin a few times before, but it was always at the entrance and they didn't talk much. Chapter 117. After the game, even the counselor who was watching from the side couldn't help but want to praise the beautiful game. Almighty Qin won, of course. Fu Jiu's stamina couldn't keep up. In the second half of the match, there was a thin layer of sweat on her fair forehead, and even her silver hair was wet. She put it to her ear, raised her hand to wipe it, and smiled. Brother Mo, I'm going to take a break. We'll play the second match later. Qin Mo glanced at him and handed his thermos to the young man. Fu Jiu was indeed thirsty. People who had just finished exercising had to drink water. She took the thermos and drank several mouthfuls. Once again, the receptionist was shocked. He turned his head silently and looked at the person next to him. Young Master Qin was really different today. He wasn't a clean freak at all. Fu Jiu drank 2 mouthfuls and realized that Qin Mo didn't drink any water either, so she handed the thermos back. The receptionist thought, if you give something to young Master Qin, he will definitely look at you coldly and slap you in the face. But, the man held the young man's hand and drank 2 mouthfuls casually. Then he turned his head and ordered them, pick up the ball. Oh, yes. No wonder the receptionists were a little slow today. This scene was too impactful. Fu Jiu saw that the Almighty didn't seem to be thirsty, so she came to Shui Yao Yao with the thermos and took a piece of watermelon in her mouth. Then she tilted her head and looked at the screen. She put one hand behind Shui Yao Yao and the other on the mouse. You don't need to be so fast for your profession. Besides the keyboard, use the mouse. When the enemy attacks, dodge first and then grab the ball. Shui Yao Yao watched the young man easily use the ultimate move on the screen, and her eyes were full of shock. She had always wanted to ask His Highness Jiu, who was so good at playing, what was his name in the game. But before she could open her mouth, she saw Almighty Qin sitting in front of them with his legs crossed. He didn't sweat at all, which made people feel that this man was naturally unattainable. He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His whole body exuded elegance and luxury. But his eyes were so cold that no one dared to look at them directly. Shui Yao Yao didn't understand how Highness Jiu dared to put his arm around this man's shoulder. Anyway, she was scared to death. Almighty Qin's gaze on her hand was too oppressive. Shui Yao Yao couldn't help but look down. Only then did she realize that Almighty Qin wasn't looking at her, but at His Highness Jiu's hand on the back of her hand. Did you see it clearly? The young man's voice was still ringing in her ears, still gentle. Hit me like this from now on. Shui Yao Yao braced herself and replied, okay. He pulled Fu Jiu over and said in a low voice, I asked you to come here to play tennis, not to teach. I even told you not to be half-hearted. Did you forget it so quickly? MMH? Fu Jiu looked at Qin Mo and said in a low voice. Fu Jiu touched her nose. Shui Yao Yao wanted to help the young man out. Your Highness Jiu, I know what you just said. You guys continue fighting, I'll pack my things and leave first. Leave first? Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. It's not convenient to take a car here. We will send you back after we finish the fight. Right, Brother Mo? Although Qin Mo didn't like the way the young man flirted with girls, he still had the basic manners, so he replied with a faint, Chapter 118. No, no need. Shui Yaoyao quickly waved her hands. When she said this, she unconsciously looked in Qin Mo's direction. Almighty Qin probably didn't want her to play tennis with His Highness Zhou. Don't ask her why she felt this way. This was her first reaction. But Fu Zhou misunderstood her look. Or do you prefer to play with Brother Mo? You pick one of us. Hearing that, Qin Mo frowned his thick eyebrows without changing his expression. Fu Zhou had already stood up with a smile. Who should I pick? Shui Yaoyao followed her and said, then His Highness Zhou should choose you. She really didn't dare to choose Almighty Qin. His inherent elegance always made her feel a little breathless. Looks like I'm more charming than Brother Mo. Fu Zhou's words were directed at Qin Mo. She smiled, revealing her sharp white canine teeth. Her silver hair hadn't completely dried yet. It was really hard to hate her. But Qin Mo's eyes swept over the girl standing next to the young man, and his fingers paused. Wasn't his little brother being too nice to Shui Yaoyao? He hadn't known Fu Zhou for a long time. Whether it was the young man outside the game or the spade Z in the game, they weren't that easy to get close to. Qin Mo always thought that he was the one that the young man treated specially. But now it seemed that he was even nicer to Shui Yaoyao. Thinking of this, Qin Mo couldn't help but take another look at the chubby Shui Yaoyao. Shui Yaoyao felt a chill on the back of her neck, and she was too embarrassed to turn around. To be honest, she was really too fat. She was different from when the young man came on the court. Her legs were chubby, and they would definitely shake when she ran, which wasn't pretty at all. No one liked to expose their shortcomings in front of their idol, but it was unrealistic to go back and play games. Almighty Qin obviously didn't want to see them playing on the computer. Fu Zhou was right next to her, and she also saw her scruples. While she was choosing a racket, she chuckled and said, I've been wanting to ask, why do you call me Highness Zhou? This is because the girls in school like you. Not that kind of like, but that kind of like. Shui Yaoyao was afraid that she couldn't explain clearly, so her face was still red. Anyway, it's your fangirls. We gave you this nickname together, because you look like the ancient princes, evil and domineering. Fu Zhou found this explanation quite interesting. Crown Prince? Her. The girl's thoughts were still very cute. Then let this prince teach you how to play tennis. A lot of girls aren't good at this. In order to make Shui Yaoyao look less awkward, Fu Zhou smiled and blinked her left eye. Then, she reached over and put her hand on Shui Yaoyao's hand. She had a handsome and clean face. Not only was her posture handsome, but her voice was also very pleasant. Exert force with your fingers. When you're playing, try to lower your body as much as possible. Keep your eyes level with the racket and the ball you want to hit. Use your ankles to drive your whole body, just like this. With that said, Fu Zhou held Shui Yaoyao's hand and pushed the racket upwards. Her movements were very cool, and her silver hair flew past Shui Yaoyao's ear. Chapter 119. Shui Yaoyao's heart was beating erratically. She never dared to imagine that she would be so close to the young man one day. His Highness Zhou's unique gentleness could really melt people. Can you? The melodious voice rang in her ears again, and when she turned her head, she saw the young man smile. Even the beauties on the tennis court couldn't help but look over, their eyes full of envy. I want such a handsome guy to teach me tennis too. That's such a sweet smile. Who is he? I don't know, it's my first time seeing him. The beauties couldn't help but stop what they were doing. They all looked at Fu Zhou through the net, their eyes burning. Only in the semi-transparent lounge, the temperature was low. The receptionist standing next to Qin Mo didn't even dare to turn his head. It wasn't an illusion. The coldness emitted from young Master Qin could almost freeze people's blood. What the hell was going on? Qin Mo looked at the court with one hand supporting his chin. His slender fingers in black gloves rested on the back of the chair. His long and deep eyes were extremely cold, and even his voice was like a flower blooming in the North Pole. Every word he said was cold and bone-chilling. Call them back. After all, he came from the military compound, and his ruthlessness was never hidden. Rest after 30 minutes. He doesn't understand this, but neither do you. As he said this, he raised his head carelessly and glanced at the receptionist. That pair of eyes was so deep that it made people's scalps go numb. The receptionist didn't dare to refute. Although young Master Qin always played for more than 2 hours before stopping, now that young Master Qin said to rest after 30 minutes, they had to rest. Young Master Zhou. The receptionist actually felt that it was a little disharmonious to interrupt the young man's teaching at this time, but what could he do? He didn't dare to disobey young Master Qin's words. Fu Zhou glanced sideways. Miss, you look very hot. You didn't rest enough just now, right? The receptionist was good at talking, and he tried to find an excuse without blinking. I haven't exercised before, and it's not good for my body if I exercise for too long. Let's clean the court first, and you two can play later. If you want to fight again, then fight with young Master Qin. Don't leave young Master Qin here to teach girls again. Otherwise, I'll have to find another excuse. Fu Zhou found it strange that the stadium needed to be cleaned after only half an hour of playing. But since the receptionist brought it up, she couldn't say anything more. She took Shui Yao Yao to the lounge. The moment she looked up, she saw that the man's expression was a little colder, but he still looked dignified. His fingers slid across her homemade book, and the other hand held the coffee. He looked like a king. This book is not bad. Of course, Fu Zhou accepted all the compliments. You bought a good hard drive, and it runs very fast. I'll use it to play with Brother Mo in the future. Qin Mo replied and didn't continue the topic. Instead, he turned to look at Shui Yao Yao and casually twirled the black gloves on his hands. Miss Shui, how did you get to know my brother Zhou? I see that you two have a good relationship. Ninth brother? Shui Yao Yao was still a little confused by this title, but she still had to answer Almighty Qin's question, even if she had to bite the bullet. His Highness Zhou and I are now desk mates. His Highness Zhou is very nice and takes good care of me. Chapter 120. Shui Yao Yao didn't understand why Almighty Qin would ask that, so she just nodded vaguely. Fu Zhou was still drinking water. When she raised her head, her fair neck looked especially long and slender. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster, and he happened to see Fu Zhou's movement. His deep eyes swept over that smooth area, and he couldn't help but reach out and pull her over. You have so much free time after school that you can flirt with girls freely. You don't need to study anymore, right? What do you mean by picking up girls freely? Fu Zhou coughed. Brother Mo, don't wrongly accuse me. Yao Yao is my teammate and my physics tutor. My grades will be in her hands in the future. Just studying? Qin Mo felt that this question needed to be answered. He looked sideways at that fair and handsome face, and he said faintly, don't bother girls with tutoring, especially Miss Shui. She should be very busy. Shui Yao Yao wanted to say that she wasn't busy, but when she met Almighty Qin's cold eyes, she swallowed her words. Fu Zhou really hadn't considered this problem. Shui Yao Yao's family wasn't very well off, and playing games would definitely take up a lot of her time. She probably had to cook for herself, and she also needed to tutor her in physics. It seemed like she didn't have much time. It's okay, I can hire a physics tutor. Fu Zhou smiled at Shui Yao Yao, obviously trying to help her out of this situation. Qin Mo looked at them from the side, and his eyes darkened. Do you feel proud when outsiders find out that you failed physics? Fu Zhou. Brother Mo, don't be so sharp with your words. This is how friendships are broken. Fu Zhou was a bit listless when it came to grades, especially physics. I have no choice. I have to pass every subject in the esports selection contest. At this point, Fu Jiu smiled again. She leaned a little closer to Qin Mo with a devilish and flirtatious look. How about I bribe Brother Mo, and you let me in through the back door? Qin Mo glanced at the young man. 10 million, and I'll let you pass. Fu Jiu's handsome face fell. Brother, give me 10 million and let me hire a tutor. The coldness in Qin Mo's eyes dissipated a little when he saw the youngster's expression. I'll tutor you in physics from now on. Shui Yao Yao, receptionist. Why did they feel that young Master Qin, Almighty Qin, had gone one round just to say this? Fu Jiu was also stunned. Brother Mo, aren't you usually busier? I still have time to tutor a slacker like you. Qin Mo stood up as he spoke, his large hand caressing the youngster's fluffy head. In the future, leave such embarrassing matters to me, understand? Fu Jiu. So the Almighty thought that her little brother was an embarrassment, which was why he wanted to teach her physics. Suddenly, he felt that studying was very stressful. What? Are you unwilling? Qin Mo studied the youngster's face and sneered. He didn't need to hide his evil aura anymore. He enunciated each word coldly. Do you want me to throw you out? Fu Jiu laughed. Then let me make it clear first. When you teach me, you are not allowed to say that I have a low IQ. Qin Mo smiled as well, looking very handsome. He reached out and pinched the youngster's chin, the faint scent of tobacco lingering on his fingertips. Do you have intelligence? Fu Jiu. Chapter 121. Then, the two of them played a round of tennis. This time, Shui Yao Yao consciously treated herself as a wallpaper. The match between Qin Mo and Fu Jiu was worth watching. But for Fu Shiming, who wanted to meet Qin Mo by chance, it was a torturous wait. He was the young master of the Fu family, and there were so many people coming and going at the door. He stood there like a receptionist, which was really embarrassing. 15 minutes ago, he had sent someone to find young Master Qin and said that he wanted to play a game of tennis with him. Logically speaking, such a request would not be rejected. But the reply he got was that young Master Qin was busy, and he was not even allowed to enter the lounge. 15 minutes, he had been standing there for a full 15 minutes. Most importantly, young Master Qin did not give him a negative answer. If he waited any longer, what would he do when those people who were doing business with the Fu family came out? If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have boasted when he first came out. Fu Shiming gripped the racket in his hand and smiled at the bodyguard in black. Can you help me ask again? When will young Master Qin come out? The bodyguard in black was polite, so he did as he was told. But after Qin Mo heard the question, he still said indifferently, let him wait. Fu Jiu saw that the bodyguard in black had come in 4 times in such a short period of time. She twisted the black bandage on her wrist and turned her head. What's the matter? Nothing. Qin Mo saw that the young man was sweating, so he turned his face over and said faintly, did that Fu Shiming bully you last time? Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Last time? Bullied her? That illegitimate son couldn't even bully her. But since the Almighty asked, she had to nod. Of course, she had to nod her head. Yes, yes. That's right. Qin Mo flicked his racket and said something incomprehensible. Fu Jiu was confused and didn't understand what the Almighty was talking about. But it didn't affect her handsomeness as she smiled at Qin Mo. Almighty Qin felt that there was nothing wrong with what he did. Since someone bullied his little brother, as the big brother, he had to stand up for his little brother. Fu Shiming didn't know when he had provoked a man. He stood outside for 40 minutes, and his handsome face was full of embarrassment. Some guests even regarded him as an assistant coach and waved him over to pick up the ball. This scene was witnessed by Fu Zhongyi and the others who just came out. Fu Shiming couldn't take it anymore. He glared at the customer and said, "You're the one who picked up the ball." The customer was also annoyed. "Aren't you here to pick up the ball? What are you doing standing here?" Fu Shiming didn't know what to say. He didn't even enter the door. He just used brute force to rush outside. Young Master Fu, what's wrong? Where is young Master Qin? The group of people asked anxiously. Fu Shiming had nowhere to vent his anger, so he directly said, "Scram." These people were not as rich as his family anyway. The faces of the elders immediately changed. Fu Zhongyi still wanted to explain. This child, the guest sneered, huh? Young Master Qin? Is young Master Qin someone he can see whenever he wants? He has been standing outside for more than half an hour. It's obvious that he hasn't given up after being rejected by young Master Qin. I've seen too many people like him. He thinks that after playing tennis twice, he can suck up to young Master Qin, but he still got angry. Pfft. Stop pretending to be rich. Just this sentence put Fu Zhongyi in an extremely awkward situation. After the bodyguard in black saw this scene, he walked in again and whispered something in Qin Mo's ear. Qin Mo's expression didn't even change. He held the racket in his hand and said in a calm voice, "Got it." Chapter 122. A game of tennis didn't end until it was dark. Qin Mo was really busy. As the CEO of the company, he was also the captain of the Supreme Alliance. His calls were bound to come from time to time. Since the Almighty had no time to care about her, Fu Jiu entered the changing room and quickly changed her clothes. She put one hand in her trouser pocket, smiled evilly at the man who was still talking on the phone, and gestured for him to go out first. Qin Mo didn't want Fu Jiu to go out first. He thought that this guy was good at flirting, and if he didn't keep her by his side, she would cause him trouble. However, on second thought, the young man was now in the rebellious stage of adolescence, so he couldn't be too strict with him. Thus, he nodded, but his eyes were still full of warning, meaning nothing more than for him to behave. The person on the other side of the phone didn't know why their president was so quiet. He thought there was something wrong with his report. He said in a trembling voice, "President Qin?" "Continue." Qin Mo put down the racket and walked into the changing room. He held the phone in one hand and bit the zipper of his jersey with his teeth. His other hand exerted force, and his posture was ruthless and handsome. Fu Jiu looked back at those smooth lines that were enough to drive women crazy and make men jealous. She then looked back at herself. In the future, she'd better not bring up the topic of comparing size with the Almighty. It felt a little dangerous. The three of them sat in the same car as before. But this time, both the driver and Shui Yaoyao were much more receptive than before. "Send Miss Shui home first." "Yes." The driver drove steadily. But it was hard to enter Shui Yaoyao's house. It was an old residential area next to a vegetable market. Bicycles were everywhere. Not to mention Qin Mo, even the driver rarely came to such a place. Shui Yaoyao was sensible and didn't let them drive too deep. "Let's stop here. My house isn't far. I can walk the rest of the way." "Thank you, Almighty Qin." "Thank you, Your Highness Jiu." Fu Jiu saw her get out of the car, so she followed. "Is it really not far?" "Yes." Shui Yaoyao nodded. Her round face was actually very cute. "Your Highness Jiu, don't worry. I will practice the skills you taught me today when I get home." "Oh, anything is fine." Fu Jiu smiled. Seeing that she had been a little nervous the whole day, she reached out and flicked her forehead. "With me as the captain, we won't lose." Shui Yaoyao covered her forehead with her hand and smiled. Highness Jiu was indeed very gentle. Both of them were wearing school uniforms. Fu Jiu was already very eye-catching, and with such an action, people couldn't help but look back. The youthful atmosphere was very strong, especially in such a lively scene. Qin Mo was still sitting in the back seat with the car window rolled down. His dark eyes were as dark as the cold night, and all his emotions were drowned in them. His hand holding the business tablet paused for a moment, as though he was enduring something. This time, he didn't get out of the car. Instead, he waited for the youngster to get into the car before he slowly tidied his sleeves. Cancel today's dinner. Let's go back home. The driver returned to the main family. But there was someone else in the car. Did young master forget to send ninth young master home? Fujio paused a little and raised her eyebrows. What about me? Chin-mo tilted his head and smiled, but he didn't look very happy. He patted the youngster's cheek with his black-gloved right hand. His breath was like the north wind in winter, cold to the bone. Chapter 123. Go home with the Almighty? Fujio thought about it, and there was nothing wrong with that. There should be a lot of good computer parts in the Almighty's house. Okay, after we get there, we can visit Brother Mo's room. Fujio said it casually. But after the driver heard what his young master said, he was shocked. Young master was going to bring someone from outside the compound home? This was something that had never happened before. Even when young master was in school, he didn't invite anyone home. Although young master's tone just now didn't sound like an invitation, but like he was looking for trouble. But it was enough to make people feel like it was a dream. The car didn't go fast, and Fujio could see the special signs of the military compound along the way. This kind of place was usually quiet in the middle of the hustle and bustle. Vehicles going in and out had to be checked, and ordinary people couldn't get in at all. Every day, there were special armed soldiers standing guard, and they were the most powerful people. In her previous life, it wasn't that she hadn't been to such a place. It was just that at that time, she was still the #1 player that all the intelligence agencies wanted to capture. As soon as Chin-mo got out of the car, all the soldiers in military uniforms raised their arms with a whoosh. It really made people feel that this place was different from the outside world. Young master. A middle-aged woman dressed like a servant came up to him. Chin-mo pulled Fujio over with one hand, and his voice was very calm. Auntie Zhang, Fujio, this is my brother. He will come often in the future, so you can arrange things accordingly. Auntie Zhang was stunned. She had worked for the Fu family for so long, and since when did young master have a brother? Boss and madam probably didn't know. Fujio still wanted to talk to Auntie Zhang, and that charming and evil smile appeared. But Almighty Chin grabbed her wrist. Don't flirt with people, understand? I'm just saying hello. Chin-mo tightened his grip, and his voice was very calm. You can't even say hello, go upstairs. Fujio was sucking on the lollipop, and she was a little depressed. Almighty Chin, as her brother, was he too strict with her? Chin-mo entered the room, threw his jacket on the sofa, and unbuttoned his shirt with his left hand. He raised his eyebrows and looked at the young man with a domineering and ruthless look. Do you think I'm strict with you? Fujio also sat down and yawned lazily. A little. Chin-mo glanced at the youngster's head that was so close to him. Somehow, the coldness in him receded a little, and his entire body was filled with elegance. Let's talk about something men talk about. Fujio. A conversation between men? It wasn't appropriate for her to chat with him. She was not a man. To be honest, Brother Mo, you've got the wrong person. Do you want to fall in love now? Seeing the youngster's listless expression, Chin-mo felt that his tone was too harsh. After all, he shouldn't treat his younger brother like a subordinate, so he added, I'm not against puppy love, but you should focus on your studies now. Fujio was confused. She didn't want to be in a relationship. Stay away from girls in the future. Seeing that the youngster didn't look up, Chin-mo's voice softened. Before falling in love, you should at least pass the test, right? Last place, huh? Fujio couldn't help but raise her arm and place it on the man's shoulder. Her eyes were very beautiful. Brother Mo, why don't we talk about how to be a good brother? Chapter 124. Usually, at this time, no one dared to mess with Chin-mo. But Fujio was different. In her eyes, nothing was scary. It would be better if you could be a little more tolerant. I haven't thrown you out yet. I'm already being very tolerant. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster's hand lightly, and his voice was low. Fu Jiu looked at her posture and explained seriously, I'm doing this because I'm close to Brother Mo. I see that there are many people who are close to you, such as Shui Yao Yao. Qin Mo sneered. He hadn't expected this guy to have feelings for such a girl. He tugged at his shirt and changed the topic. Are you hungry? Qin Mo's lips curled into a smile as he looked at Qin Mo. Fu Jiu nodded with a lollipop in her mouth. I've been hungry for a long time. Hearing that, Qin Mo glanced at the youngster. But he felt that he was making a mountain out of a molehill. It was just a good feeling, not a liking. It was normal to have feelings for people at this age. Too much discipline would indeed attract disgust. Youth was rebellious. Thinking of these words, Qin Mo decided to discipline him appropriately and not overdo it. What do you want to eat? Qin Mo asked Fu Jiu as he walked to the phone. Fu Jiu thought for a while. Spicy hot pot, with more tripe and beef, and a plate of vegetables. Qin Mo didn't attack the youngster for being a foodie after hearing that. He lowered his eyes and pressed the intercom. Hello, Auntie Zhang, let's eat at home. Prepare some hot pot seasonings, spicy seasonings, and, Fu Jiu looked at the man's handsome and elegant side profile and was a little surprised. She thought they would go out to eat, but she didn't expect to eat at Qin's house. Look around first, I'm going to change. After saying this, Qin Mo tugged at his collar as if he was going to walk into his bedroom. Then he thought of something and stopped, asking, Do you want to change too? Of course, Fu Jiu wouldn't agree. She didn't want to experience what happened in the changing room again. Brother Mo's clothes are too big for me. Hearing that, Qin Mo looked the youngster up and down. He was indeed a little short. But he didn't say this out loud. As a good brother, it was necessary to save some face for his little brother. Unfortunately, Fu Jiu didn't realize that the Almighty was saving her face. After all, Almighty Qin's eyes were too expressive. She wasn't stupid, so she knew what he was thinking. She looked down at herself. She was 173 centimeters. As a girl, she wasn't short at all. Since her master was gone, of course Fu Jiu would walk around. She was especially interested in this man who had almost caught her. After all, she had been free and unfettered in the West for so many years. The police had sent a lot of manpower to lock onto her, but they had yet to find her. They didn't even know whether she was a man or a woman. This time, she was found out partly because she couldn't keep up with the tools she used before. But even so, the Almighty's reasoning ability was inhuman. With Qin, with one, he, with, he, he, Fu, with, I, he, with, he, I, Fu, he, Fu, he, with, he with, he. Chapter 125. On the mainland, there weren't many people who could study criminal psychology. What's more, there weren't many who could write annotations in a book. Fu Jiu curled up her thin lips playfully. The Almighty had hidden himself quite well. No wonder they all said that young Master Qin was someone the entire Northeast province couldn't afford to offend. If the police had someone like the Almighty, it would be hard for her to hide herself. Criminal psychology, psychological profiler, and computer expert, Fu Jiu always believed that there were some people in this world who couldn't be compared to them no matter how many times they were reborn. The Almighty might be one of those people, interested in my book. Qin Mo had already changed his clothes. He was wearing a light-colored knitted sweater with a pair of cloth trousers. It made him look much softer, like those male celebrities in Country H at home. His black hair was stuck to his ears, and it was slightly damp. His exposed wrists looked especially white. He walked around Fu Jio's back and put his slender fingers on the book, Criminal Psychology, she was reading. The light scent of mint mixed with a hint of tobacco fell from the top of Fu Jio's head. It was very familiar and very pleasant. In that position, when Fu Jio turned her head back, she saw the man's smooth chin. Fu Jio thought about his height again. She wasn't short, but the man was a whole head taller than her. No wonder the Almighty looked at her so disdainfully when he walked in. He was so tall that he indeed had the right to disdain her. Qin Mo also lowered his eyes. His deep eyes fell on the young man's face, and they seemed to freeze for a moment. Soon, he took the book out of her hands and put it back on the shelf. He grabbed the back collar of the young man's school uniform with his other hand and turned his body sideways to ask Fu Jio. His thin lips were very close to the young man's face, and his breath could hit Fu Jio's face. "Do I look good?" "Not bad." Fu Jio smiled lightly, and it was somewhat seductive. "No wonder Brother Mo could locate my range so quickly. Your deduction ability is so strong. If I knew this earlier, I wouldn't have jumped out so quickly. I would have played a few more rounds with Brother Mo." Qin Mo told himself once again that the young man was in his rebellious phase. As an older brother, even if this guy touched his things, he wouldn't. He couldn't break his claws. However, he still had to take care of this child. Qin Mo exerted his strength. He didn't care what position the youngster was in and dragged him out. "You can read the extracurricular books later. Let's go eat first." Ever since she met the Almighty, the number of times she was treated like a sack had increased. "Fu Jio, Brother Mo, let's talk. Don't always drag me around like this. It's affecting my image. Won't it affect your image to read other people's books?" Qin Mo grabbed onto the youngster as though he was lecturing a disobedient cat. Fu Jio didn't deny it. "I just want to see how powerful the person who caught me is. Brother Mo, what else do you do besides playing games?" "Make money." After Qin Mo finished speaking, he pinched the youngster's chin forcefully. "Don't ask so much. If you continue with your nonsense, I'll cook you up and stew you in hot pot." Chapter 126. I don't need to chase after a girlfriend. Women will naturally chase after me. Qin Mo's voice was very calm, and he lowered his handsome face. Even his breath was on Fu Jio's lips. "So what you said is not within my consideration. Be good and listen to me. Don't let me break your neck. That's what you need to do, understand?" After saying this, Qin Mo let go of the youngster. His back was straight and even seemed to be matter-of-factly. Fu Jio found it hard to refute what the Almighty said. According to the man's style, he didn't need to worry about finding a girlfriend. In Jiang City, not only girls who played games worshipped him as a god. Even young ladies who didn't play games couldn't resist the temptation of the Qin family's power and influence. And, even if all these things were thrown out, with the Almighty's figure and looks, even if he went to a nightclub, he would still be a popular cowherd. In the future, she shouldn't attack the Almighty with girlfriends, because she couldn't do it at all. Unlike the Almighty who attacked her grades, every attack was accurate. Thinking of this, Fu Jio was a little depressed. She was going to comfort herself with hot beef hot pot later. But what she didn't expect was that after she sat down, there was a set of chopsticks and bowls on the table. That seat was placed in front of the man. Fu Jio looked up at Aunt Zhang with a light smile. That clean and handsome face was full of sunshine. Aunt Zhang didn't dare to make eye contact with this handsome boy. She just kept tilting her head and looking at Qin Mo, looking like she wanted to say something but didn't. Seeing this, Fu Jio knew that the Almighty had ordered her to do something. She didn't beat around the bush and said to Qin Mo, "Brother Mo, where are my chopsticks?" The beef in the spicy pot was boiling. At this time, she took it out and stuffed a big mouthful into her mouth. Even her lips and teeth were fragrant. Just thinking about it made her feel delicious. Qin Mo only lifted his eyes slightly and put a pile of beef into his bowl with his chopsticks. This brother of mine is so bad, so of course I'll eat it. You watch. Fu Jiu. Almighty, you can't be so cruel. You won't have any friends, do you know that? Qin Mo glanced at him again, only to see the youngster's handsome face collapse instantly. His beautiful eyes were still looking at him, his silver hair fluttering innocently. This reminded him of the youth's rebellious phase, and he began to reflect on whether he had gone too far. After all, this was the youth's first visit. Are you craving beef? Qin Mo asked the person opposite him. Fu Jiu held her chin and licked her lower lip with the tip of her tongue, looking devilishly handsome. Brother Mo, I've been playing tennis with you for so long, I'm hungry. When you were playing tennis with me, how many people did you flirt with? Have you counted? Qin Mo smiled, but it wasn't warm. I spent a third of my time teaching others. Fu Jiu paused and stood up all of a sudden. She put her arm on the table and leaned over. Her thin lips curled into a smile. Jealous? Jealous? Qin Mo's body temperature dropped even further. He held the bamboo chopsticks in his hand and used his eyes to signal the youngster to look at the bottom of the pot. You want to become it again? Chapter 127. Qin Mo could tell that the young man was listless again. His deep eyes glanced at Fu Jiu's lowered head, and the corner of his mouth lifted. He acted like a big brother. Will you still have puppy love in the future? Fu Jiu shook her head and felt that something was wrong. When did she have puppy love? She was just flirting with a girl. She wanted to look up and explain, but she didn't expect that as soon as she opened her mouth, the man stuffed a mouthful of tender beef into it. After the beef cooled down, it wasn't too hot, and it tasted just right. The man was still holding the bamboo chopsticks in his hand, but the other end of the chopsticks was fed to the young man. After seeing this scene, not only Aunt Zhang, who was standing next to them, opened her mouth wide, but even the soldiers standing guard all looked at each other in disbelief. What was going on? Young master He actually knew how to feed people. Aunt Zhang still remembered that when the young master was about 8 years old, he was sitting in the courtyard reading a book. At such a young age, he was already very much like a gentleman. He wore a pure black suit with a fluffy windbreaker over it. He always had a cup of tea by his hand, and everyone in the courtyard would turn to look at him. Madame was also very happy at that time, and she wanted to feed the young master a bite of fruit. At first, the young master didn't say anything. He probably thought that Madame was tired of coaxing him. Only then did the young master put down the book calmly and said to his wife with a dignified expression, "Mother, saliva spreads germs more than 10 times faster than normal breathing. It's common sense not to feed other people with your own toothpicks." This scene was still replaying in Aunt Zhang's mind until now. How could a child who was less than 10 years old talk about the spread of germs to his own mother? That kind of scene was really cute and surprising. Later on, whenever Aunt Zhang cooked something, her first thought was whether the food was clean or not. After all, their young master's obsession with cleanliness was real. But, when did such a young master feed people with his own chopsticks? Didn't they say germs could spread? Now the young master didn't care about germs? If Madame saw this scene, she would definitely lose her elegance. Fu Jiu didn't think much of it. Nothing was better than having meat to eat. In an instant, he tossed aside the question of puppy love. Qin Mo looked at the youngster's handsome smile and didn't say anything else. Since he was the younger brother that he recognized, of course, he had to raise him carefully. He should have realized his own problem by now. If she was no longer in love, it meant that she was still obedient to him. Compared to those who ran amok all day long, this was much better. Moreover, the way the young man ate was also very appetizing. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like a cat that he raised. As long as it was fed, it would be obedient. He would observe it for a while. After all, it was the rebellious phase of youth. After telling himself this, Qin Mo ate a few mouthfuls of beef with the same pair of bamboo chopsticks. This shocked Aunt Zhang once again. She took out the spare pair of bamboo chopsticks in her hand and didn't use it. She felt that this day was like a fantasy from beginning to end. But at the same time, she felt happy for her young master. After all, this was the first time she saw the young master being so close to someone. This kind of young master was finally a little more humane. Chapter 128. After eating the hot pot, Fu Jiu was very satisfied. Just as she was about to say goodbye to the Almighty in a cool manner, she heard the man say slowly, "I've asked someone to prepare the physics books. The tutoring starts today." Fu Jiu had a natural aversion to physics. She supported her chin with her fingers and smiled like a playboy. "Rushing like this will affect your learning efficiency. In less than 7 days, your school's monthly exams will start. Do you think you can pass physics with your poor grades if you don't rush the tutoring?" Qin Mo took the pen. His side profile was still handsome, and his voice was calm as if he was just stating a fact. But even so, our Lord Jiu still felt like she was being attacked. Fu Jiu couldn't help but ask herself why she chose the Almighty of all people to tutor her. "Get up and follow me upstairs if you're full. Don't dawdle if you're a man." Qin Mo was wearing a knitted sweater with one hand in his trouser pocket. He didn't look so oppressive, and because of this, Fu Jiu didn't dare to flirt with him. The Almighty was too pure and refined. If she wasn't careful, she would be swayed by his face. The ancient people said that femme fatale was not groundless. She was bewitched by his face. Focus. The two of them sat in front of the same desk. Apart from the physics textbooks, there were all kinds of data cables, economic magazines, and the tablet that the Almighty often used, as well as psychological analysis tables. Fu Jiu was more interested in the latter. Qin Mo's slender fingers tapped on the desk as he flipped open the physics textbook with a calm expression. Fu Jiu finally pulled her attention back. Almighty Qin's phone vibrated beside him. He didn't look at it immediately. Instead, he looked up and asked Fu Jiu, "What don't you know?" Fu Jiu's fingers were still twirling around her silver hair. After hearing this question, she froze again. Then, she looked at Qin Mo seriously and said, "I don't know anything." Qin Mo's hand paused as he turned his head to look at the young man who was still flirting with him and raised his eyebrows. "Are you proud?" Fu Jiu touched her nose. "I didn't say I was proud. Start from the beginning." Qin Mo's fingertips landed on one of the formulas. "Remember this formula first, then." Fu Jiu listened carefully. After all, this was the key to whether she could participate in the esports selection contest. "This isn't right." Unexpectedly, Qin Mo was exceptionally patient when it came to teaching. Perhaps all geniuses were like this. In their eyes, physics and chemistry were just some little tadpoles that they could play around with. During this period, Qin Mo also received 2 calls, both of which were business-related matters. The Almighty was multitasking and handled them beautifully. Someone seemed to have asked, "Boss Qin, what formula are you talking about? Speed? Density?" "I'm going to tutor my brother," Qin Mo replied calmly. The other boss on the other side of the phone was shocked. He turned his head and asked his friend next to him, "When did CEO Qin have a younger brother? Which one of them is having a second child? That's not possible, right? Little brother?" His friend was also confused. The boss nodded. "That's right, it's his younger brother. He even said that he was tutoring his younger brother." Friends. Chapter 129. He lowered his head, and his warm breath blew behind Fu Jiu's ear as he spoke. Fu Jiu paused and looked up at the man's eyes, which were as deep as the sea. He said one last sentence, "I'm not going out today." Then, he hung up the phone. When his eyelashes lowered, they cast a thick shadow on his face, making his side profile look exceptionally handsome. Fujio tilted her head to avoid this action. Chin Mo didn't say anything else, and his eyes swept over the youngster's face. Write it again. It was really stressful to have such a master. Fujio moved the pen in her hand quickly, like a struggling cockroach. The Almighty's presence was too strong, and no one could compare to him. But there was one good thing about him. The biggest difference between a genius and an ordinary person was that he could quickly get an accurate recognition. Fujio. The youngster looked at him handsomely with his white teeth biting his nose. Chin Mo rubbed his temples with his slender fingers. Physics is really not suitable for you. Brother Mo, let me tell you something. Don't you think physics is anti-humanity? Fujio said seriously. Chin Mo sneered. I think you're the one who's inhumane when you were born. Fujio. Can't we have a pleasant conversation? That's not going to work. Chin Mo turned his fingers and pulled the physics book aside. At this speed, you won't pass in 7 days. Fujio agreed with the Almighty for the first time. I think so too. Tick out your recent courses. Chin Mo flipped through the magazine. Fujio looked at the physics book in her hand and decided to tell the truth. You have to ask the teacher. Chin Mo looked sideways at the youngster and said indifferently, if I were your physics teacher, I'd throw you out right now. She didn't even know where she was studying. Fujio didn't feel guilty and asked curiously, what do you do if you know the courses? Help you predict the questions. The Almighty's careless words made Fujio realize the essential difference between a bad student and a top student. It turned out that a top student could predict the questions. This was unfair to poor students like them. What was the difference between this and knowing the answer before the exam? Fujio was still a little depressed when Chin Mo stood up from his seat. What are you going to do? The Almighty decided to be merciful and let her rest? Chin Mo glanced at the youngster. Call your director and ask about his progress. The Almighty didn't say anything, but for some reason, Fujio could see the helplessness in his eyes. Fujio thought to herself as she unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. Then, she lowered her head to look at the series of formulas. She was so handsome. The physics formula was so ugly. It was obvious that physics was more anti-benevolent. When the director of Jiang City No. 1 Middle School received Chin Mo's call, he was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. When Chin Mo said the second sentence, he straightened his back. Young Master Chin. Where was the physics in the worst class? This. I'll call the teacher now. Chapter 130. Director Wang didn't know why young Master Chin suddenly cared about the seating problem, so he just said respectfully, yes. Director Quan, don't you think that it's easy to have a wrong feeling when a man and a woman sit together at the same table? Chin Mo's slender fingers were still holding the mineral water bottle. The reflection of his eyes on the bottle was like the water inside, with a slight coolness. Chief Wang was dumbfounded. Wrong feelings? Puppy love. After Chin Mo said these two words, Director Quan immediately understood what Director Chin meant. Yes, young Master Chin is right. We, the directors, have sat together to discuss this problem. It must be changed to have a man and a woman sit together at the same table. Chin Mo said faintly. Director Quan couldn't hear the emotion in it, so he asked nervously, young Master Chin, do you know anyone in the bad class? Otherwise, according to young Master Chin's character, he would never ask about people in the school. Chin Mo didn't speak this time, because the young man was looking up at him with his long and narrow eyes that were bright and beautiful. Fujio didn't know what Almighty Chin said, but she was thirsty, so she followed him over. Seeing the man still holding the phone in his hand, she raised her eyebrows. Brother Mo, can't you get the answer? Yes, I can. Chin Mo handed the mineral water to the young man and said faintly to the other side of the phone, that's it for now. Send me the course progress later. Almighty Qin didn't think there was anything wrong with what he did. As a big brother, there were some things that he had to stop and nip at the root. Since the young man liked to flirt with people so much, then he should keep him quiet and not get close to girls. However, it wasn't good for others to know about this, especially the young man. People in the rebellious stage of adolescence probably didn't want to be controlled like this. Thinking of this, Qin Mo glanced at Fujio next to him. Fujio took the mineral water and drank a few mouthfuls. Her white neck and smooth chin always gave people a kind of indescribable beauty. As if aware of Qin Mo's gaze, the young man turned his head. 2 or 3 strands of his silver hair stood up, and he winked at him with his left eye with a slight smile. Qin Mo dragged him back to his seat. Once again, he felt that his actions were correct. This guy, he had to make him untouchable. Director Quan was even faster. As soon as he hung up, he called the physics teacher of the lower class. The first thing he asked was, "Is there any student with the surname Qin among the students you teach?" The physics teacher was also stunned by Director Quan's words. "There is a boy whose surname is Qin. What does he look like? What about their living conditions?" If they were young Master Qin's relatives, even if they were distant relatives, their families wouldn't be too bad. The physics teacher shook his head. "He's a very ordinary student. He's slightly plump, and his family sells breakfast." "That's not it. If it's not a distant relative, what else could it be? Could it be because of girls?" Director Quan seemed to have come to a sudden realization. He sternly warned, "In the future, this kind of table arrangement must be for the boys and the girls. Young Master Qin's girlfriend is definitely in there. That's why young Master Qin specifically called him." Chapter 131. Director Quan thought to himself, that was before. He didn't know that young Master Qin's girlfriend was among these girls. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such a thing even if he was beaten to death. However, he still needed to have some manners when dealing with his subordinates. "Teacher Zhang, this isn't being conservative." Director Quan thought of young Master Qin's words as he said, "It's true that boys and girls sitting at the same table can stimulate boys' learning attitude, but it is also easy for these children to have a wrong feeling. To prevent puppy love, we should start with the arrangement of tables." Physics teacher, "Okay, that's it. Just remember it," Director Quan said seriously. "How are your physics studies going recently? What are the key points? Send them to my email." After Qin Mo received the material, he only glanced at it a few times. Then, he began to take the pen and mark the key points one by one, circling all the possible questions. What was even more amazing was that he found 4 questions from the big questions and tapped on them with his slender fingers. When you take the monthly test, you will be tested on one of these 4 questions. If you don't know how to do it, just write down the answers. Your memory should be good. Not bad. The young man smiled calmly with a lollipop in his mouth. In fact, every hacker had a good memory, especially when it came to data. If it weren't for the fact that Lord Zhou didn't like physics, she wouldn't have been so miserable and needed the Almighty to tutor her. However, this man was really amazing. He could get so many big questions right. Then, he could just fill in the multiple choice questions in front and he should be able to pass. When Fujio thought of this, she immediately became happy. She showed her white canine teeth. "Brother Mo, since you can control the scores, shouldn't we be dismissed now?" "You can control the scores?" Qin Mo raised his good-looking eyebrows. Fujio pointed at the test paper. "Here, here, and here. Altogether, it's enough to pass. How can a student taught by me, Qin Mo, only get a passing grade?" The man's tone was very indifferent, but he was naturally noble and domineering. Fujio, why did she feel that letting a straight-A student like the Almighty teach her physics was simply a trap? A straight-A student's requirement for scores was not on the same level as a slacker like her. She just wanted to pass, not to become a physics enthusiast. But she had no choice. After all, she still needed the Almighty's help. If one were to think about it carefully, there would be benefits to it. Compared to being tortured by all kinds of formulas, she was more used to memorizing the questions. Thinking of this, Fujio began to nibble on her pen again, working hard. When it was almost 10:30, she scratched the back of her head and frowned. It was already so late. Brother Amo, should we call it a day? Chin Mo was still in a video conference. He paused it calmly and glanced sideways at the youngster with fluffy silver hair. His gaze was deep. Sure. When Fujio heard this, she stretched her waist lazily and smiled devilishly. She packed her things and was about to leave. It shouldn't be hard to get a taxi home at 10:30. Chapter 132. She was going to wear it? When did she say she was going to wear pajamas? What's with the pajamas? She was the one who was going home. Fujio turned her head and looked at the man's sexy and handsome face. She raised her eyebrows. Brother Amo, I think we have a fundamental problem with our communication. It's too late. Uncle Zhang isn't here. It's not safe for you to go back alone. Chin Mo's voice was very calm. He crossed his long legs and sat back on the sofa. There are so many guest rooms. Just pick one to sleep in. Fujio curled up her lips. It's safe to take a taxi back. You want to take a taxi around here? Chin Mo glanced at the young man and threw Fujio's packed school bag back onto the wooden shelf. His indifferent tone was devoid of any emotion. Fortunately, this world sometimes looks at one's looks, not IQ. Fujio. The Almighty was attacking her again. However, the entire Chang'an street didn't allow foreign cars to enter, so she really couldn't take a taxi. Fujio picked up her phone and said, "Then I'll call my chauffeur to pick me up." Hearing that, Chin Mo's left hand, which was holding the business tablet, paused for a moment. Then, his eyes slowly narrowed, and there was an endless coldness in them. Is it hard for you to sleep here? Fujio stopped dialing. She felt that the Almighty was quite tired after tutoring her for 2 hours. She couldn't just leave after using him. At least, she had to find an excuse to leave. If it was Saturday, I would have gone to bed. Today is Thursday, and I have to go to school tomorrow. I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep if we change places. Chin Mo looked up at the young man. Then, he picked up the tablet and stood up. He patted Fujio's left cheek lightly. When did you become a good student who attended classes on time? Don't find such a bluffing excuse. I'll go to the company tomorrow and take you to school on the way. Now, go to Aunt Zhang's to get your pajamas. Or do you want to study one more question before going to bed? Fujio, could this alternative of choosing one more question be called an alternative? Her chest was still bandaged. She was afraid that she would be exposed if she slept here. Fujio lowered her eyes, thinking about how to reject him. There was a knock on the door. Young Master, 9th Young Master's pajamas are ready. It was Auntie Zhang. When she heard that the young man was going to stay at the Qin family, she was very surprised. Young Master was becoming more and more humane. He even invited a friend to stay for the night. If Madame knew about such a major change, she would definitely ask for all the information about this 9th Young Master. In fact, even Aunt Zhang herself was curious. Which child of the Fu family was this? How could he get along so well with their young master? Chin Mo retracted his hands from the youngster's face. Come in. Aunt Zhang held the pajamas with both hands, and she looked at Fujio with eyes full of kindness. Young Master Zhou, I see that you are thinner than young master, so I brought you the clothes that young master wore in middle school. I hope young Master Zhou doesn't mind. Fujio could reject the Almighty, but if she didn't accept the pajamas now, she would be hurting an old man's heart. He thought about He Honghua, then looked at Aunt Zhang's sparkling eyes. Our Lord Joe only hesitated for a moment. He was thinking about how to say something so that Aunt Zhang wouldn't be too disappointed. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.